Welcome, Mama, to the Postpartum Coach podcast. Finally, a podcast dedicated just to the mental and emotional world of us postpartum women. I am your friend, fellow mama, and postpartum life coach, Lizzie Langston. After intense birth trauma, delivering my first child, and really scary mental health crises following the birth of my second and third baby, I set off on a 6-year journey to understand postpartum mental health from the inside out. On this podcast, I bring you, as a mom of 4 and a certified postpartum life coach, the tools you need to avoid mental health crashes, to get out of the postpartum rut, and to embrace a vivacious motherhood that you love from the inside out. Let's get you feeling like yourself again, Mama, and welcome to the Postpartum Coach podcast. Good morning from the Postpartum Coach. I'm out on a walk with my 10-month-old little Wren baby. She's my 4th baby. So if you're new here, I'm so glad that you stopped by. The Postpartum Coach podcast is unlike, and I really don't feel like I'm just saying this because it's my podcast. It truly is unlike other podcasts and healing paradigms postpartum. I am writing a book, you guys. I have officially energetically called in the book that has been hanging over my head in a good way, like up in my crown chakra. I have felt it, and it's probably going to be called Postpartum Freedom. But no matter what it ends up being titled, the book is coming through. I have so much ancient wisdom that is making its way through my mind and body on behalf of women. And I'm not trying to say that I'm like an oracle and that you should follow me and listen to me and like I know more than you do. I say that to say that I believe all women's bodies can be oracles, in the sense that all women's bodies are designed to have a direct connection with the divine, and it benefits all. And when we learn to channel and we learn how to really listen deeply to our bodies, it's a game changer, and it will help change the world. So part of what I see as the healing that we do postpartum is essentially learning how to come back home to the body. So much of the pain and the suffering and the fear and the anxiety and the everything that's going on postpartum is, for many reasons, women are kind of out of their bodies to a degree. They are up in their heads. They are afraid and not sure what to do with the really big, intense emotions that come up. And that is what I wanted to speak to today. This week, my heart was broken open. I was exploring my own mother wound in my therapy session. And if you aren't sure or familiar with what the term mother wound is, basically, when you think about turning your heart towards the person, the mother that raised you, it's just any sense of not being able to connect or be seen, or any emotional neglect or abuse or trauma. And I'm not alluding to the fact that those things exist in my relationship with my mom, because that's not something that I want to talk about publicly. But what I will say is that my heart was broken. It was broken open. And I was feeling the grief of like when I was a little kid, and the way that I just couldn't express myself and I couldn't seem to connect in the ways that I wanted to. And as I reflect on this, I also reflect on all of the many times I've heard women, moms, tell me how horrible of mothers they think that they are. And I believe that first of all, we're not horrible mothers, that's a perception that I want to speak to today. And second of all, that these two things are related, and that if you knew the pain that you were carrying, that's not just yours, it also belongs to the women who came before you, your mom's relationship with her mom's relationship with her mom's relationship with her mom. Okay. That is the mother wound. It's a lineage wound as well as an individual wound. But if you could see all of the pain that's hidden in your body and in your psyche that you're carrying, and all of the wisdom that's being squashed because you're actually full of sadness or, suffering or fear and terrifiedness and trauma, then you would be so much more kind to yourself. So here's what I want to break down today. What do we do When we see ourselves parenting our children, whether you're a new mom that just has a little baby, this might not apply as much, but it's something you can tuck away and use for later as your kids get older. But then those of us moms who might have a younger child, like baby toddler age-ish, but also older children, what do we do when we see ourselves parenting in a way that breaks our heart, that is not satisfactory? It's not okay to us. What do we do with that? Okay, so I listened to the most amazing TED Talk today. It was given by Dr. Becky Kennedy, who is the host of the podcast Good Inside. So if you're really honing on your parenting stuff with your older children or even your younger toddlers, it's a great resource. But before you jump over there, I need you to know that she says something that I also speak of, because I can see now that not doing this one thing is what perpetuated my depression and my depressiveness. And it sucked the joy and the passion out of my motherhood. And that is blaming myself when I had an oops, when I had a parenting moment that wasn't my best, when I was speaking from a place of triggeredness or pain or anxiety or frustration, and I didn't just nail my emotional self-regulation, which how many times does that happen? Because we are human. But, we want to find a combination because we don't want to blame ourselves. And I'm going to talk about that, but we also don't want to let ourselves off the hook, right? Because we don't want to perpetuate this behavior. So what can we do that both repairs the damage possibly from the way that we showed up, but that also helps us not do it again? And Dr. Becky talks about literally a process and a parenting tool called repair, where we're repairing with our kids. But there's one interesting thing that I noticed that she specifically said. She specifically said, you have to repair with yourself first. You cannot go and, not just an apology. So a repair is different than an apology. And I'm going to invite you to check out the full TED Talk to understand it completely. What I want to focus on is that even this PhD, Dr. Becky, right? She's talking about parenting. She says the same thing that I say, which is that we have to forgive ourselves. We have to not blame ourselves. So let's talk about self-blame or self-shaming or self-criticism or, any sort of way where you turn on yourself in a moment that wasn't your best and you decide that because of your behavior, you are bad. You're a bad mom, you're a bad person, or you're bad at something. This is an attack on our self-worth. And I didn't know this, but Dr. Becky, in her TED Talk, she said that when a child is left alone to deal with a big, intense negative emotion, that they just have a few natural coping skills within their mind and body that come prepackaged. Like when they're born, they adapt in these ways, whether they're taught them or not. And one of the ways is that it is actually safer for a child to believe that they are bad and that their caregivers are good. That feels more safe to a little kid than to play with the idea that maybe their caregiver is bad. Now we see that eventually teenagers don't do this, right? It's young children. Young children will turn on themselves to let their caregiver off the hook because they're so dependent on that caregiver that to try and run away or, say, hey, mom, you're actually just not good at parenting. You're just not doing a good job right now. Or you're wrong. I'm perfectly lovable just the way I am. Like, wouldn't that be awesome if 6-year-olds could say that? Be like, mom, you need to work on your frustration and self-control because I'm actually lovable just the way I am. That'd be so awesome. But their survival mode kicks in. And what they do is to protect themselves and to stay connected to the source, AKA the parents or the caregivers that is keeping them safe and sheltered and providing for their needs, no matter how emotionally volatile or crazy this caregiver is, all right, and how imperfect and human they are, the child will actually blame themselves, self-blame. And so what happens is this little coping skill, because we're not taught different and because so many of us were left alone to deal with big emotions, put in timeout, put in our room, oh, you're just too much. Oh, you're so dramatic. Oh, you're crying. Our parents didn't know, or our caregivers probably didn't know the damage that would cause. what we did is we turned the narrative in our mind to, I am bad. As children, we did this. And unfortunately, that follows us, that pattern of self-blame, which again, reminding you, it's not actually true. It's a way to take all the responsibility on yourself so that you free your caregivers of any responsibility because you need them. You need them to provide for you. And so it is actually threatening to your basic needs to be critical of their emotional care of you. Again, this is young, little children. And so we do this then, though, as adults. We never stop doing it. And I shouldn't say never. There comes a point, and I find that a lot of times the launch point for this differentiation or this change in this pattern, postpartum is an amazing portal for changing this. But there comes a point where an adult woman who's now a mother of her own and has her own family starts to say, hey, wait a second. Maybe the way that I respond, has something to do with the way that I was raised and my environment and my nurture. And not that that needs to be the complete, not that you need to put all responsibility on your parent. Although honestly, in the beginning of the healing journey, sometimes that is what people need. They need to say, oh my gosh, my parents messed me up for a little while before they can then share the responsibility. They can say, okay, it is true that I didn't get the nurturing that I would have loved, and I'm an adult. It's my responsibility to heal myself and to do it differently. Okay, so it's like a combo of both. But for a while, some women just feel really angry and they feel really betrayed and they just need a lot of space from their parents, and that's okay. Okay, so can you see how this survival skill as a child of self-blame and turning on oneself is still playing out in your parenting and in your motherhood? Even if you just have one baby and you haven't really had to parent or discipline a lot because they're just too young, think about the way you talk to yourself right now. Think about the way that you overdo it on taking responsibility when other people are upset with you. We might call this people pleasing. We might call this a fawn response. And I'm going to tell you right now, as the postpartum coach, I say this with the authority of not like any authority that's been given to me. And I'm not having authority over you. I'm saying that I have worked with a lot of women, like hundreds of women I've talked to on free consultations, or I've coached them. And this is postpartum. And after you have a baby is actually a time where your body wants to shift that narrative. But anytime a pattern is ready to be released, it actually kind of hits its climax peak point. And so what I see happening with a lot of women is that they are stuck in this really hyper self-critical place. And it is eating away their joy and passion, just like it happened for me. And the good news about that is that when you're in that place and it's pretty self-destructive, that typically, to me, what that means, how I would interpret that, is that it's ready to be released. It is no longer serving you. When you have a pattern that starts to work against you blatantly and you can see how it's weighing you down and whatever, then it's time for it to be done. But the question becomes, I know, because we want to be good parents and we don't like the way we do things sometimes, or we do think there's a legitimate problem, what do we do instead? So just like Dr. Becky Kennedy says, number one, in these moments when you've done something that you aren't proud of and you wish you could take it back, the first thing to do is to repair with yourself, to give yourself a little bit of slack and be like, okay, so I snapped at my kid because I was worried about the work week on a Sunday night while I was cooking dinner for my family. That was a lot for me. I was feeling a lot of feelings at once. And then my child walked in and complained about the meal I was cooking. And I hit my emotional maximum capacity, which is limited. I don't have an infinite amount of emotional capacity. And so all of my internal processing, in addition to processing what my child walked in and said, chicken for dinner again, I hit my max. So taking that personal responsibility without self-blame is the magic. You can take responsibility. You can see where you didn't want to do it that way, but you can also see why you did it that way. Another explanation could be, this is all I've been taught. All that I was modeled growing up was maybe you had a parent that was often the victim and was just always like, poor me, or asking for sympathy from others, or there was always somebody else that was doing something wrong in their life. Or maybe you had a parent who was just a really hothead, big yeller, or maybe you had a parent that just stuffed all the emotions and just really didn't talk through things with you or ever model that for you. And so if nothing else, you can always go to the place of, honestly, given what I was modeled, I always am doing the best that I can. We're always doing the best that we can from the tools that we've been given. If you don't believe me, then here's what I want to say to you. It's possible that there is a mismatch between the mom you want to be and the tools and the modeling and the social reinforcement that you were given as examples from the people that raised you. And this is an interesting crisis that I also experienced in my motherhood, and it's what caused a lot of my depression. Is I saw in my mind and I felt and I had a vision of the mother I wanted to be and that I felt like I could be and that I was meant to be. But then I would see myself snapping at my kids and just doing all the things that were not who I wanted to be. And it was extremely devastating. And my tendency with my first couple kids was completely to self-blame. And all that did is it created more damage on the inside of me, which then created more toxicity in the way that I interacted with my kids. So if you are serious about becoming the parent you want to be, listen to me when I say you have to stop. You have to stop blaming yourself. It is not an option. It will create more toxicity. It will create more depressiveness, and it will disconnect you and isolate you from the ones that you love the most. And when humans are disconnected and isolated, they're vulnerable to shame and self-criticism, and they don't show up with real, genuine connection and authenticity with their kids. They start going through the motions. They start, they're just not all the way there. And that's sad, but we don't have to do it that way. So step one is you find an angle that basically says to some degree, I really was doing the best that I could in that moment, even though I'm not happy with it. I really was. I can give myself a break because I was doing the best that I can, and I want to learn how to do better. Then you can go to your child. And again, the full TED Talk is so magnificent. I'm going to put it in the show notes with Dr. Becky. But you can go to your child, and an apology might be like, I'm so sorry that I did that. I'm so sorry. That was so wrong. Whereas a repair has a lot more focus on what they might have felt in that moment. And you can use this with any relationship, not just with your children. And so it might, and she gives an example of it in the TED Talk, but it might be something like, hey, I was thinking a lot about that moment when I snapped at you in the kitchen, and I bet that was really alarming for you and maybe even overwhelming. So you're kind of stepping into their world for a minute, and you're really actually going to their feelings, which means that it can't be about you at all, which means that it's going to feel probably horrible if you've been mean and self-blaming. But before you do this repair with the person that you love, if you have repaired with yourself first, this part won't feel so painful. It'll still feel bad, but it won't feel painful, like deeply painful. Okay, because when we don't repair with ourselves, that's when we give shitty apologies, because it hurts so bad to say sorry because we're torturing ourselves about it already, that we have almost nothing left to give to a real repair to our person that we love. And so you could say, yeah, I bet that was really alarming for you and overwhelming. And then I didn't even come and help you feel better. I wasn't there for you, and you were alone. And I am so sorry about that. I really, truly would have loved to be there for you. And I want you to know that it wasn't your fault. You had, every right to not be okay with the dinner. And in a different moment, you could also, not in this exact moment, I think it would be appropriate to talk to your child about, really having a respect or an appreciation for how hard you were working on the dinner. And maybe a different way to say, ew, chicken again. They could be like, chicken's not my favorite. This isn't my favorite. That could be a more appropriate way for them to express. But when you're repairing, we're not going to go there yet. When you're repairing, the focus is all about them, how they felt, the way that you feel about how you showed up, and how you would have loved for it to be different. And specifically, The way I responded might have felt like it was because of what you said, but it actually wasn't. It was about what I was going through on the inside, what I was processing, and my lack of ability that I'm still working on of my temper and my emotional regulation. And I want you to know that isn't how I want to show up. And if you ever want to talk about it, I would listen, but not try to fix it. I would just listen. And any other moments that have been similar like that, I want you to know that I'm always open to just hear how you felt and hear what it was like for you. Okay, so that is a repair. But remember, the repair's got to start with you. I hope that this is shining a bright light of hope. I want you guys to know that there are so many of us women, so many of us who are internally just crying out in sadness, desperation, shame, self-loathing, because we know that we could be better moms. We at least really want to. And sometimes we start to lose hope and we start to believe that the bad behaviors or the ones that we're not proud of, they are who we are. But what Dr. Becky says, and this is my takeaway I want to leave you with today, is that we always have the power and the choice to separate the behavior from us. You are not the patterns that you were modeled when you were little. They do not define you. And if deep in your gut and if deep in your belly, you decide and you desire to be a mother that is very different from the one that you had, or a child or a parent or a caregiver that was different from the one that you had, you can be. You absolutely can be. This is what I'm dedicating my life to. Obviously, I'm dedicating my life to my kids and my family. And then professionally, I'm dedicating my life to helping postpartum women take the intensity of this emotional time and know how to move that energy in a way that is not just going to help them feel better, but you have such a portal, such a precious moment. And it's not just in the first few months after the baby, by the way. It's like in this formative shaping your new motherhood years, which could be after your fourth baby. Still, it's like your new motherhood years. You have a chance to rewrite the story. And not that you don't have chances later, okay? But I just find that the body is so open and so ready to change the story for the next generation. And so it's a beautiful time to delve into the work of your motherhood and your internal landscape and to learn how to stop self-blaming. So if that is work that you want to do and you want to be in a community of women that are also doing it, I want to invite you into my community. The community is called Postpartum Freedom. It is a membership community. So you can pay either each month or for the year. And you come to live coaching calls, you come to classes, and you also have a community where you can chat with other moms and share and ask questions. It is truly a safe place, and it is a place to begin again. It is a place to harness the potential and the opportunity of postpartum to really set the foundation for your next 10 years, for your motherhood, and not just your motherhood. The beautiful part is that when you start to kind of heal from the trauma, heal from the pain that you're holding, and see a different version of yourself in your motherhood and in your life, and get back your passion, your playfulness, and your purpose, you have so much freedom of time, money, and space to be able to really consider, who do I want to be in this world? How do I want to show up? What gifts and talents do I want to put out there? And I see moms doing amazing things with all of that time and energy. It's so rewarding to watch. And it all starts with the choice not to blame yourself, to repair with yourself. And I promise you, it feels more effective to beat yourself down, but it is not working. If it did work, you would be who you wanted to be in your motherhood by now. It is not working. I invite you to repair, to forgive, to see how you're doing your best. And that will infuse your motherhood with the life and the love that you wish you could have. And I know you can do it. I believe in you. And if you want to be supported by a community of people, including myself, that believe in you and cheer for you and hold you in the hard days and help you remember to give yourself credit, then come join us at LizzieLangston.com/community. Okay, I love you guys. We'll see you next week. Mama, friend, sister, hi, it's Lizzie. I am so grateful that you chose my podcast today. Thank you. Thank you for tuning in. I want you to know that I have more help for you, more hands-on help to uplift you and support you, including a free text message series, as well as a popular free mini course moms love. It's called Get Out of the Postpartum Rut. I also have a coaching membership community for postpartum moms. You can check out all of these at lizzieLangston.com/work with me. That's Lizzie, Lizzie, Langston, Langston.com/work with me. I'd be honored if you checked out any of my stuff. And thank you again for listening. You are stronger than you know.